It's time for another edition of the podcast, and we're going to talk about how kids and grandkids influence your planning over the next two episodes. So check us out right here on Wisdom and Wealth.
This is Donna, and this is Jim, each with a family that had to begin again. As they've brought their worlds together, they've learned a lot about blending families and finances along the way. Now, they're here to help you take on this new chapter with clarity and confidence. This is Wisdom and Wealth, financial clarity for families in transition.
Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the podcast. It's Wisdom and Wealth with Donna, Kendrick, and myself here to talk investing, finance, and retirement. Of course, Donna's here to guide us through all the good stuff because she's got the knowledge base. How you doing, Miss Donna? What's going on?
We're doing well. How are you doing, Mark?
Hanging in there. Looking forward to chatting with you a little bit about the kids and the grandkids. They can be an integral part, of the planning process. I guess no matter really how you want to view it, right? Whether you want to do a lot or a little, it can still really affect what you guys are doing when it comes to planning for your future. So it's an important topic.
Yeah, it's an important topic that I share with many of my clients because sometimes they're dependent on the help of grandkids if they're a family in transition and there's been a loss or a divorce, or the grandparents to actually help the grandkids get to college, right? So we actually want to be respectful of gifts, right? And we want to move forward with it. So I thought this was a really good one to talk about because we're in the midst of kids too. We've got 6 in our blended family. So how do Jim and I get to retirement? So let's get going.
Well, you just mentioned college, right? You got one there like right now as we're taping this, they headed up that way to kick him off at the curb, right?
Yeah, it's true. So for all of our watchers on YouTube and listeners, Jim is not with us today because he's taking our middle son Squish back up to Penn State. It's his sophomore year, and Squish he loves college so much. He was just so anxious to get there that they went a few days early. So just me on the podcast today.
All good. Look forward to chatting with you. So all right, so let's talk about families where mom and dad. First one, we got 10 of these, by the way, folks. Okay. We're gonna do 5 this week. We're gonna do 5 next week. Families where mom and dad are on the verge of retirement with kids that are adults, but maybe still on the payroll in some form or fashion, right? So I know that's not quite you guys there yet, but a lot of people are in this boat where they still got some straggling, bills that they're taking care of for the kiddos.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very, very common with 1, the speed of our lifestyle nowadays, and 2, how easy it is to put things on like automatic repeat, automatic payments, right? So the first thing I always say to my clients is get a printout of whether you have life on your Amex or your debit cards, whatever payment features you use most. Let's pull 3 statements 3 months back and let's go through them. And just seeing what are those reoccurring payments and where are they going to? The big one many of us find are our cell phones, right? Because many of times you buy these plans and the phone isn't paid off until X amount of years. And so you're just like, okay, kids, like I'll just keep you on it, right? But let's really think about that, right? If we want little Bobby to be independent and be free, like he should have his own phone. He should take over the plan. Let them run with that. As well as what I don't think little Bobby knows is that many times if you're the owner of the plan too, you can log in. You can see when he's on that phone. You can see who he's texting. I don't know, little Bobby might want his privacy.
He might not like that. Yeah, he's not so little anymore. You know, it's funny. It's like you're reading my mind today because literally we've hardly ever messed with it. But the wife messages me earlier. She's like, hey, I forgot how to what's the password to get into our account because the bill looked a little different and I want to see what's going on. And our daughter's on there. She's in the Navy. She's 27 years old. But to your point, it was just easier to have everybody all on the same plan. Now, the difference to your point, Donna, about having some accountability is that the wife can access her account, so she pulls money from the kid's account to help pay that cell phone bill, right? So, so while we're combined in the billing to make life easy, and I guess to get the discount or whatever for she still has to pay for her own stuff. So,
yep.
To your point,
that's a big one, and there's a really good book out there. I think it's Thomas Stanley, Millionaire Next Door. Have you ever read that?
The Millionaire. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. There's different feelings to that book, right? But when you get into the second half, it's a lot about when we as parents allow our adult kids to really thrive on their own, or do we keep them in this understanding of we've got them, we've worked hard, we want to share many gifts. But it's a really good vantage point, I would say,
It's a
of
great
how to
read,
do it.
really. Yeah, I mean, for all the different points that are in it. So if you haven't checked that out, it's certainly something worth checking out. The Millionaire Next Door. So good suggestion there, Donna.
Thank
All
you.
right, number two.
Yep.
Parents who had kids later in life, and they are maybe still paying for the college. Obviously, hopefully you did some planning with your advisor or, working with somebody and did some planning to hopefully, help with some of this. But I mean, look, the cost of everything is, as we all know, has just gotten so out of control. It can be daunting.
Yeah. And so we are then faced as older parents of how do we afford college for the kids? How do we afford maybe to give them a deposit on a house if that's something we want as a legacy, and afford our own retirement? And if we really look back at the beginnings, many of our clients that have had kids later in life is either because they had a hard time with fertility, and usually they have an on average $60,000 in bills that they've put out for fertility treatments, or they've gone through adoption, which here in the Philadelphia area is an average of about $40,000 in the last few years.
Wow, really?
So, yeah, so depending on how you do it, right? So those are some big bills that they gladly paid or leveraged, right? Through maybe loans or through 401k borrowing or extended family members they're paying back. And then where do we either save for our cash reserve, save for our kids' education, as well as saving for our own retirement? And I really recommend everyone sit with a financial professional because there's ways you can try to almost do both, right? Maybe Roth savings is something that you want to look forward to, right? So that maybe in years to come, you can take out of the principal. Or maybe it's just kind of hedging the bets. Like, what is the highest interest rate on that loan? Are we better off putting some money into retirement and just allowing that loan to run? But it's a really hard choice. And sometimes that's the word you have to remember, that it's a choice.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's a great point, because the balancing act. I mean, look at all the stuff that people are facing right now. Whether you're a youngster, in Gen Z or something like that, you're hearing them say, "Hey, how do I save? For." Even buying a house, let alone my future self. I can't even think about that. And then you flip that over to the older side and you go, how do I save, or how do I, save for retirement, but also help take care of my kids with a college deal or, whatever it is. So it's definitely a daunting task all around right now.
It is. And the one thing I think I might have shared in our previous podcast is just remember, for these parents that are a little bit older, is that you can take loans for college, but you can't take loans for retirement. And as we're moving possibly into a higher income tax structure, and that means higher income tax on our 401ks when we go into withdrawal strategy when we're 73, it's going to be impactful, right? So how do we make these decisions right now? And what opportunities can we leverage to afford college for the kids without limiting our ability to retire in the future?
Yeah, great point for sure. All right, number 3, grandparents who want to help with the education process. Hey, cool. That's awesome. Especially if you're thinking about if you're already a retiree or getting close to it and, got a grandkid. Because, they're so cute. You want to do more for them than you do for your own kids anyway, because they're like these little cute little things. But there's a lot of new changes too that have also made some rule changes that maybe make this a little easier now.
Exactly. And one of those big ones is the way that grandparents can save into a 529 and then apply it to the college tuition. So grandparents can have 529s that they own, and the beneficiary is the grandchild. A few years back, FAFSA, would look at that contribution when the grandparents started paying out of the 529 on what we call is like our kids pay scale, right? So it became an attribute or a asset of the kids. Now it's no longer considered that way. It's considered a gift from the grandparents pretty much coming in, not at that same heavy weight as it being owned by our kids themselves. So that is awesome. Our grandparents can do what we call accelerated gifting, which is 5 years, the annual gifting contribution straight into 529. So little Bobby's born, lovely grandparents, they really want to spoil early on because he's adorable. In it goes, and then it's hands off. That money just gets to grow and compound as long as it's used for education. And there's lots of definitions of what is education nowadays. From 529s, it can be beneficial. And grandparents can also now pay directly to the institution themselves. That's a wonderful way to actually preserve legacy, fully contribute to the 529 as grandparents, pay tuition straight to the institution, and then great grandbaby Bobby can actually have a 529 roll forward. So,
Gotcha.
wow.
Okay. Yeah,
I wish
right.
I
So
had rich grandparents. I do
yeah,
not.
no doubt. No doubt. Yeah, I didn't either. All right, so we'll switch off the kids for a second, but it's still obviously the theme is, how you thinking about planning for your own retirement or your own future and taking into account your family members. So in this case, Donna, my wife and I my brother and I actually the other day were sitting at the diner having something to eat, and he's 66. And he's like, he was looking around for a new place to move, a new apartment or whatever. And a retirement village called him, had finally gotten back to him and given him some information. And he's like, well, I don't need what they have to offer. He's doing just fine from a physicality standpoint. But our mother is 83, right? So where I want to go with this fourth point here is, when you're an aging parent, counting on your adult children to care for you, right? To take care of you. So we started having to have this conversation that mom's 83. She's had a couple of falls but mentally she's pretty sharp. If she keeps hanging on, which we hope that she does, we could be looking at needing someone to help care for her, because unfortunately she's in a situation where she doesn't have those funds anymore. So she is going to have to rely on her children to take care of her. And I know that none of us want to be there, Donna, but this is where the importance of trying to hopefully plan and do things right earlier on will maybe eliminate that being a burden feeling. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And so if someone is preparing and planning for that situation down the road, that's what you have. You have the gift of time on your hand. You have time to sit there and have that conversation with your parent, right? And to have a realistic conversation. Say like, Mom, Dad, I know you might be really private about your finances, but I am maybe your only child, right? And so I want to know what the expectation is here. Can you at least sit with a financial advisor and we all have a family conversation about this moving forward? The importance of long-term care, right? When you're probably upper 50s, lower 60s, and you are in physicality in good shape, that's the time to try to get underwritten for it if you can afford it, right? It's hard out there. And then on top of it too, the quality of life, right? What kind of care are our parents looking for? Do they want to be with us, living in our basement or living in the little Bobby's old bedroom, right? Do they want that?
Poor little Bobby. He's just getting jacked up on this podcast, but yeah.
Or do they want to live independently? Is that their worst nightmare, moving back in with us? We think we're perfect. We may not be, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Here we are. And then for financial strategies too, it really is understanding if we're already there, we're already in retirement, we're already aging, like where is the best place to pull funds if they're available for our parents to let some of those funds continue to grow? Or are there anything, right? What do we then be able to have to use either out of our own finances? What can we afford? What locally can we find as services? And it's a hard conversation and a tough place to be.
Yeah, and flip that a little bit. If your parents didn't do a good job and you are an elder, you're a person over 50 like me, you're trying to plan on your own retirement, and now you do have the realization that I'm going to have to absorb some of the cost for one of my parents' care. Mm-hmm. That's scary. We just got through talking about like, how do we, compartmentalize all these different pieces to save for, plan for. It's a rough go. So the sooner you can talk, whether you're whether you're the parent trying to take that burden off the kids, or you already have that burden as the kid and you're trying to plan for that, get in to see a qualified professional, right? To see if they can help you.
Yeah, a qualified professional for financial planning, as well as, I'm throwing it out there, family counseling, because this conversation can be really hard between a couple, right? Man. Like, what are you doing for my dad? What are we doing for your dad? What are we doing for Aunt Sissy, who has no kids? Like, you can really have
it could snowball. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's not financially or emotionally good for anybody. And so the one thing I always say is be clear, right? Have consistent limits and have some boundaries. And sometimes when they're communicated, decisions can be a lot easier because you know the parameters you're dealing with. Financial advisor, family therapy, or a really good listening, very wise sage person in your family. Bring them on.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Bring on the sage person who's doing a lot of the deep thinking, right?
Oh.
All right. So let's do the fifth one here, Donna. We'll wrap it up this week with people who want to be intentional about leaving a legacy. So, all the kind of scary things we just kind of had there, let's put those aside for a second and just say, hey, when as a couple, we're thinking about, getting into retirement, what do we want to leave to the kids, right? In general, like, are you even on the same page? so many times advisors, professionals like yourself get couples in front of them and you realize they haven't even really talked this through. One's like, I want to leave a lot. And the other one's like, I don't want to leave anything,
Yeah.
So,
And that was definitely like conversations we had in our family, right? My mom was always like, all right, how do we protect the girl? She was very much into like education and paying it forward, where my dad was like, they get educated and then I'm done, right? He's
Gotcha.
like, I hope I leave them nothing. I gave them the power of education.
Right.
Two very different ways to look at it, right?
Neither one's wrong. It's just is.
It is. And knowing that what that is part of your financial plan, right? Because that could be 60, 70 years down the road, right? We want to start these conversations really early with clients. But then that actually helps us as financial advisors position where your money's going to go, making sure that we have your beneficiaries designated well. Are we using life insurance policies accurately? Are we using our tax benefits and structures, especially for inherited IRAs, well, moving some money possibly to Roth savings versus traditional so that it's inherited with not that big tax nut. Moving forward, we need to know those things so that we can protect our clients, their assets, and the legacy they want to leave. More than anything, I think so many of my clients have always heard me say there's three things I always talk about. Importance of financial planning, check box. The importance of life insurance, right? Because that can really set people up as well as protect some of our assets. Can work very, very many different ways. And the third one is always have your estate documents done. If things aren't beneficiary designated well, retirement funds, life insurance, we also have our will, right? And those are things that aren't beneficiary designated. And that is a lot of clarity between the people you're leaving the legacy to so that they don't fight. Like, let's just make them behave nicely too. So your will, your healthcare directive, your power of attorneys for finance and healthcare, that's part of that legacy that you're doing. You're making life easier for them when you pass.
Well, and clarity is what it's all about. I mean, that's the subtitle of the podcast, Financial Clarity for Families in Transition. So if you got some questions, need some help on this topic, we're going to be back again on our next episode with a continuation of this. But if you'd like some help, reach out to Donna. Get onto her calendar at seftonfinancial.com. If you're checking us out in video form, you'll see it up on the screen the whole time anyway. But seftonfinancial.com. If you're checking us out in audio form, it's SEPHTON financial.com. And don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple or Spotify or YouTube. Donna, thanks for hanging out and breaking this stuff down. I'll see you in a week or so. We'll do some more.
It's a good conversation. Thanks, Mark.
Oh, always good. We'll see you next time right here on Wisdom and Wealth with Donna Kendrick, certified financial planner and founder and certified divorce financial analyst at Sefton Financial. We'll see you next time.
Registered representative offering securities through Cetera Financial Specialists LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Cetera Investment Advisors LLC. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Sefton Financial LLC and Cetera are not affiliated. Sefton Financial is located at 8200 Flowertown Avenue, Suite 1B in Windmore, Pennsylvania, 19038.